I'm Rob. I'm Chief Toaster at Toast Ale. Delighted that tonight we are going to be hearing from Stuart, our master brewer extraordinaire, telling us all about our beautiful Oat Pale Ale, a really delicious hazy pale ale that we've brewed with our good friends at Rebel Kitchen. So Zahra and Victoria will be telling us all about the amazing things at Rebel and why you are so awesome and why we have chosen you, because you are epic to work with. And Louisa, of course, my partner in crime, co-founder and COO here at Toast, who will be talking through all things mission and what this beer is really all about in terms of raising awareness. Yeah, feel free to like ping over any questions, pop them in the chat box as we go, and we will try and field those at the appropriate time. Yeah, so without any further ado, let's crack into a beer. Hopefully you have some in front of you. Whoop, whoop. Absolutely delicious. I need this tonight, I tell you. So I'm looking forward to this. So yeah, Stuart, over to you to please properly introduce this delicious beer. And I know you're going to be excited to tell everyone about the hippest hop in the UK right now that is in this, the Harlequin hop. So tell us all about this beer.
Indeed. Well, hi everybody, and thanks, Rob. Yeah, for those that don't know about Toast, I suppose take a step back. Why did I get involved with Toast? Well, because they got the opportunity to be a bit disruptive in the market. And we do that by using breadcrumb in our beer, usually anywhere from 10 to 20, even 30% of breadcrumb sometimes. But being disruptive in the market is one thing. Being a brewer, in fact, look, when you start brewing, you're given things like this kind of book here, a fairly hefty tome. There's another one here, Practical Brewer. It takes a good couple of weekends to get through those things. But then someone says, will you make a hazy oat beer? And you have to realize you've got to throw these things out the window because they have got no relevance to this beer we're making anymore. So hazy oat beers are, they're a relatively new thing, but as I say, that they go against the grain of everything you want to do as a brewer. We've spent, or my colleagues have spent centuries trying to make wonderful, crisp, clean beers. And this clearly isn't. This is juicy and hazy and full of flavor. So that presents a few challenges to us, not least of which is, I say, getting the right oats in there. We can't use any old oats, for example. There are some, well, if you've ever seen an oat growing, you've got sort of a husk around it. We don't want that. We want to get inside to sort of the germ, if you like, of the oat itself to get some of that sugars, because oats do something very, very funky to beer. Those of you who have porridge, for example, in the mornings, you may have seen when you're making that beer, or so you're making your porridge, as you're stirring it, particularly if you stir it on the pot, on the stove, as it gets warmer, as maybe the milk or the water bubbles up, you start getting lots of sticky strands happening within there, and it's binding that porridge together, which is what makes porridge very appealable. But in beer making, it tends to make everything in the brew house stick together, and we don't particularly like that. So we have some funky challenges to sort of get around that. We have to measure temperatures quite cleverly. We need to make sure that the water content is right to sort of accentuate the flavor of the oats. So for those that do eat porridge, well, certainly from my family background, we tended to have a little bit of salt in the porridge in the morning. I don't know if any of you have done that, but that kind of makes it a bit sweeter. So we were doing exactly the same with the brewing water. We were making the water a little bit more brackish, for want of a better term, to bring some of that wonderful sort of oaty creaminess into this beer. The oats we were using, they actually did look a little bit like porridge oats, to be honest. So if you want to make this at home, then feel free. You can go ahead, use whatever you can get from your local oat supplier. The other thing that we needed to look at, because these beers are quite challenging in the sense that they can change color, because the oats and the wheat bring sort of well, it's a polyphenol, the kind of stuff that makes tea taste bitter. They bring a lot of those to the mix, and if that happens in a beer, the beer can go purple or pink almost overnight. So there was a few little challenges around that to make sure that this beer stays looking like this orange hue that you've got in front of you at the moment. Otherwise, fairly straightforward as far as brewing goes, apart from all the hops go at the back end. There's no hops really going into this beer as a bittering hop. We don't try and clarify the beer during the boiling because you want to keep that haze or that protein in the beer. And we've used some interesting hops in here. We've used UK Cascade, so that's a hop grown in Kent and Herefordshire. That brings a sort of orange note to it, but we use it slightly as like a salt and pepper at the start, just to accentuate the other hops. We then have a hop from New Zealand called Waiitai that brings sort of peach aromas into the flavor profile. So this is the flavor when you're tasting the beer, not when you're smelling it. Just sort of the mouthfeel is influencing as well. The Azaka is another hop, which is a citrus element, but as Rob has indicated, one of the big players in this one, and it's the one at the back end, it's the one you can smell when you're drinking this beer. This is a hop called Harlequin, and it's come from our friends and colleagues down at Charles Fair, and we're a big hop merchant, and it's one of the new UK breeding programs. So these hops are being developed to counteract the sort of the very funky, fruity flavors from the States, but they're grown here in the UK, which means people like Toast can brew with them and not have the same carbon impact of transporting hops all the way over from places like Washington State. So brand new hops being grown in the UK, which have got the same kind of flavor impact. The Harlequin itself is probably putting out stone fruit, mainly a peach aroma. So you should be getting, certainly as you first open that can of beer and pour it into your glass, that sort of very, literally peachy. Other things that might be stone fruit, perhaps apricots, you might get some of those elements as well. And yeah, essentially that's the simplicity of the beer. We just threw the rule book out of the door because it didn't apply for this beer at all. And that's part of the funkiness, I suppose, of the Rise Up series. We are challenging conceptions or preconceptions about what brewing is, what you can do with brewing. I don't know if anyone's seen there was an article in The Guardian, I think it was yesterday, talks about how individuals can have better or improve their impact by looking at businesses that can utilize food waste, whether it be from gleaning or whatever else. And there's a little link in the bottom of there that brings up the Toast website. So this is all great challenges, and these are all things that I think we should be looking at. This particular one, maybe it is time to literally throw the rule book out of the window. I think it's been a very successful beer. The guys brewing it with me, they've all loved it. They've actually come up and stood up to the challenge pretty well, and we've learnt a fair bit about porridge oats at give or take 15 to 20% of the grist, which is the amount of sort of dry goods that go into the beer. So compared to a normal beer, you'd be lucky to get 3 or 4% oats. So we've really pushed out the boundaries here. So yeah, little snapshot about throwing my hard-earned textbooks out the window.
Stuart, I'm not going to lie, I missed a chunk of that when one of my boys turned off the internet just as you started speaking because the TV wasn't working, and he is now going to get a stern telling off that Daddy's upstairs. I can't believe this hasn't happened the entire 18 months of lockdown. It never happened, and then just now. But I've heard you tell me it all before. I'm sure it was wonderful, enlightening, and crowd pleasing. So thank you, Stuart, you living legend. Ask away with lots of questions. What I haven't heard lots of before is from Zahra and Victoria telling us all about the amazing Rebel Kitchen. So over to you both to please, and I believe we are going to be honoured with a presentation, which is very posh for these things.
We've gone for it.
So we're going posh. Go for the presentation and enlighten us about Rebel, because we love you guys.
Great, thank you so much. So cue probably another technical glitch as I try and load this presentation. So bear with me just 1 minute as I load this up and share my screen. So hopefully, can you guys all hear me, and can you see
seamless.
Rebel and Toast on this? Perfect. So actually, I don't think Stuart could have given us a better intro before you kind of logged back on, Rob, about what we are all about as a brand and why we're so excited to collaborate with Toast and where the sort of similarities are between what we all do. So we're Rebel Kitchen. If you haven't heard us before, I'm going to tell you a bit about our products, but first and foremost, we're going to tell you what we're all about. We are rebels. We're all about being rebels. And so much in the way that Stuart was talking about throwing the rule book out and doing things completely differently, being really disruptive, that's what we're about too. So we think a rebel is a person who questions the norm and never settles for the established way of doing things. And really that's where we come from. So we don't compromise, we do things differently, all because we want to be rebels with a cause. So talking of doing things differently, and what does that mean? From a business point of view, it means three things primarily for us. We're a certified B Corporation, as is Toast Ale. The B Corp. So B Corp, in case you don't know, in a nutshell, is basically a stamp of approval that says that you're a business that complies with the highest standards environmentally and socially, and that you're a super accountable business, and you have full transparency and traceability. So it really means you're out there and trying to achieve something better through business, so balancing purpose and profit. We also donate 1% of our revenue to projects that support the planet via our membership with 1% for the planet. That's the commitment that we make. That's not just donating 1% of profits, but our actual revenue. So for every penny that's spent, 1% goes to projects that help the planet. And I'm going to tell you a bit more about one of those that we do with Rebel. And then also carbon neutrality, that's really important to us. So as Stuart talked about, ingredients that come from all over the world, a lot of our ingredients that Steve's going to tell you about do come from all over the world. So it's really important to us that we measure all of our carbon footprint and we offset it. So we offset it through projects like wind farms, and that's really, really key to us as business being sustainable. And then from a product point of view, a bit about our products, and as again, Z will tell you more, we are a totally vegan brand. All of our products are vegan certified. And to us, vegan is really important, and plant-based diets are really important because we think they're the key to more sustainable, more healthy lifestyles. Now, we're not saying that everyone has to be a hardcore vegan, but we're all about converting those people who are a bit plant curious, who want to try a more sustainable lifestyle.
We are a vegan brand as well and highly endorse plant-based diets. So,
cheers to that.
Yeah,
cheers to that.
Liquid diets are best.
And then organic. All of our products are certified organic by the Soil Association. And I'm going to talk more about organic because that really ties into our interest in soil. And then finally, we make sure that every single one of our products is top quality, the best taste, where we've won awards for it. And that's really probably leads me in to introduce you to Zahra, to see. She's our recipe rebel, and she is, I guess, our equivalent of Stuart, our wizard in the kitchen to make our revolutionary food and drink. So take it away, Z.
Thanks, Vix. Yeah, so I mean, really aligned with what Stuart was talking about kind of doing things differently and throwing out the rule book. It's really kind of our bread and butter at Rebel. Nice. So I'm gonna talk through a couple of our ranges, what makes them special, what's involved, and then we can talk about some more around organic and our farming schemes. If you just pop on to the next one. Okay, perfect. So this is our semi-skimmed milk. We also have a whole version. So this is our sort of everyday use blend of plants taste like milk product. And we've got the green and the blue to kind of mimic that you would find with dairy and kind of bring those more curious, maybe flexitarian people on board into our brand. And you can see actually we've got 5 plants in this product, and each of these elements is actually bringing a very specific flavor attribute. So it's a bit of a tricky question. Describe the taste of milk, Rob.
Ooh, it is It's more a texture, isn't it, than a flavour that instantly comes to mind. But it's quite sweet, I would say.
Okay.
Bit sort of fatty, sweet, very silky, smooth. Quite a neutral. It's a hard one to give you the flavour of it.
I mean,
milk,
I like that. That was a very good answer. So just as you mentioned, creamy sweetness, there are a lot of different elements actually to go into what the taste of milk is. So that's what we're trying to bring in using the different plant bases. So we've got the coconut cream that forms the main body, the creaminess of the milk. We've got brown rice for a bit of sweetness, cashew for a subtle sort of earthiness, oats for smoothness. I really like that you said this as well when you were talking about bringing the smoothness of the oats and the creaminess of the oats into your ale as well. So really aligned with what we're doing. And hemp for savouriness. So it's really important to us during the development phase of any product is to actually look for really good quality ingredients, really vet the suppliers, really go back to, how is it processed and what's going on, to really get all of the detail, all of the clarity around the ingredients, so we can really stand behind something and really shout about its quality. So that's really important part of our approval process. So yeah, this is our general sort of day-to-day milk. If you go on to the next slide, this is our barista version. So we've got black packaging here, and this is really sort of same concept, a blend of plants that tastes and works like milk, but specifically designed for coffee. So with the previous, you could use it in your cooking, you can use it in your tea, you could put it in your coffee as well, or a smoothie. This is specifically
coffee fans would, I think, strongly contest that any milk is designed for coffee, but I will still accept you at your word that this is a milk designed for coffee.
Well, I can tell you exactly why. So during the development process, we actually wanted to keep as many plant bases in, just like we have in our semi-skimmed and whole, but we found that actually some of the elements maybe tainted the flavour a little bit, and they actually took away from the coffee experience, and that really wasn't what we wanted to do with the product. We wanted a really neutral kind of milk that wouldn't taint away from the coffee flavor, really let the coffee sing, and obviously so much is involved in actually choosing the beans and the blends, and it's such a shame for at that last point where you're adding in like a soy milk or an almond milk to actually take away from of that craft. So we've got oats for smoothness, coconut cream for creaminess, and faba bean for savouriness, and this really worked well for the coffee versus the hemp. Just because coffee is quite an acidic environment and it's quite a complex environment, and this was the best sort of formula for those. And this really works well with foaming, so you get really lovely micro foam, really good for latte art. During the process, we tested this with many different coffees and many different sort of foaming techniques, and we got baristas on board to kind of give us a grilling almost, and really put our mouth is, and it came out really on top against even dairy. So, you maybe want to give that one a go. But yeah, that's our barista milk. Very quickly touch on our shakes. So we say shakes made good because they're sort of great flavors, plant-based, no refined sugar, nothing artificial, and again really leaning on real ingredients. So we've got here our banana. We use 13% of real banana puree to give you that flavor. We don't rely on any flavorings, and actually during the process we wanted to benchmark where different brands were in terms of their banana milkshake or milk drink offering. And many of them actually didn't have any banana in, and it was just relying on flavoring. So this is why we do what we do, and kind of change the norm. Why would you drink something without any banana in if that's what you were going for? So that's a little bit on our shakes. And our coconut water, so to just kind of move this slightly away from the milk proposition. So this is again organic. We use young green coconuts. These are the best for a coconut water product. Their flavour is really delicate, and you get loads of water in a young green coconut. And the older the coconut gets, that sort of brown coconut that we're all really familiar with, that tends to be more sort of hard, meaty, and actually very little coconut water in there. And the coconut water you do get is quite sour. So it's really kind of a different proposition completely. So we really do champion using the young green coconuts, small farmers from the Philippines, and it's pink. So if you haven't seen this before, that might be a bit sort of, why is this pink? That's a bit strange, but this actually works nicely with something that Stuart said, that coconuts are really full of polyphenols, and when these react with light, they turn pink. So pink coconut water basically hasn't been tampered with in terms of heating to actually denature those polyphenols. We use pressure to process this, so you do get that sort of shelf life safety and food safety aspect, but it doesn't taint the natural qualities and the flavor that you get from your young green coconuts. And this leads really nicely onto some more from Vix.
Thank you so much. Yes, that really leads us on to what we want to talk about today, which is soil. And actually, I really love this quote that both Toast and ourselves have been using when we've been talking about this project, which is we need to stop treating soil like dirt. It's so important to our planet, our planet's diversity, and our planet's health. It does so much, which I'm sure you'll hear about more later. But I wanted to talk a little bit about how we're doing our bit as a brand and a business for the soil of our earth, as well as obviously getting involved with this fantastic collaboration. So first off, I mentioned earlier that we use organic ingredients. All of our products are organic certified. And why that's so important is because organic farming is free from chemical fertilizers and pesticides, and those sorts of things kill soil organisms, and they leave topsoil prone to erosion. So it's really, really important to protect the soil, that we minimize the use of these chemicals. So there's a really interesting stat here that if all UK farming became organic, it would mean that the amount of pesticide, which is in the food chain, but also, I guess, conversely in our bodies, would drop almost 100%, which is an amazing stat. So we work with Soil Association on this, and they've got three key principles, which I think are really, really relevant when we're talking about soil. They talk about healthcare and ecology, and really those are sort of three principles that help to replenish the soil, replenish the earth through organic farming, and that's why we're really, really keen on organic, and all of our products are organic and will always be. Secondly, we support regenerative agriculture. So in a nutshell, regenerative agriculture is working with nature, not against it. So nature has been doing its thing and doing amazing stuff for millions and millions of years, and then we've kind of come along and have tilled the soil. We've taken the nutrients out of it, and regenerative agriculture is really focusing on putting all that back into the soil and making a more sustainable future. So the way we support that is, I mentioned our 1% for the Planet donation. So that donation we're currently putting towards a project being run by Pure Projet in the Philippines, which is where, as you mentioned, our delicious young green coconuts come from our coconut water. And that's basically around 3 areas. So we sort of give education, funding and support to farmers in the Philippines that farm those coconuts, and that helps them understand soil health, to reduce erosion, to increase the biodiversity of their farms through things like agroforestry, crop diversity, composting, the husk of the coconut, all those kind of things. And that, again, threefold has benefits. Obviously to the environment, it's really, really key that we regenerate those ecosystems. It's so important for all parts of the environment. What's also really important is the social impact. So a really interesting stat I heard is that the average age of a coconut farmer in the Philippines is 60. So by helping them, helping with their livelihood, helping their them be able to make more money and to have healthier, better well-being, means that there's leaving a better state for the next generation of coconut farmers, which is really important to build. And the reason that's really important also is because there's a business impact for us. So yes, we're a brand and we want to do all this stuff, we've got to think about our business, and we want to make sure that there are coconuts that are young and green and delicious for us to make into coconut water for years to come. So that's kind of really key areas that we're working on when it comes to regenerative agriculture. And then finally, something that's obviously really close probably to everyone's hearts who's on the call here, is minimal waste. So this stat was from I got from the Taste website, which it blew my mind. We do our bit to minimize waste. So for example, in our supply chain, when we create our coconut water that we've already talked about, the water goes into the bottles, the coconut meat is used for other products, and then the husks and what's left goes to fuel the plant. And we're also looking at other ways that we can create compost, etc., out of those to help the local community. So it's fully cyclical. And also we do work with Fair Share. So we try and minimize any waste that we have in our supply chain. But if we do have any excess product, we donate it to Fair Share. And that helps communities as well and ensures that nothing goes to landfill. So that's really, really important.
Awesome.
So my last little bit, and I wanted to kind of add, was how can everyone do their bit? I think it's so important to kind of take something away that you can actually feel like you're doing to help. And apart from obviously buying delicious Toast Ale and sort of supporting the whole Rise Up series, I've got a few suggestions. So first off, try organic. We're not expecting everyone to have a fully organic diet. It's a really hard thing to do. But if you can make little switches, say with fruit and veg to organic, it just helps support more organic farming, more of that kind of organic agriculture, which helps the earth ultimately. Support regenerative if you can shop local, if you can seek out businesses that support regenerative agriculture, that can only be a good thing for the longevity and sustainability of our planet. Reduce food waste. There's absolutely loads of amazing advice on the Taste website about reducing food waste. So top tips go on there. And buy from better businesses. So I mentioned B Corp earlier. That's just one way that you can look for this kind of stamp of approval of a business that cares beyond making profit. It cares about the environment and the planet, which is ultimately why we're here. So that's it from us. Thank you, Rebels. Maybe
that is epic.
What do you think, Rob?
Yeah, thank you so much. That's absolutely fantastic. I'm gonna say it's not very rebellious to have a presentation, but I will still allow it. I'd have thought something more rebellious would have just been, I don't know, just ripping it up and saying I'm not talking or I'm not doing a presentation. But no, it was very good.
All right, noted. Good feedback.
Absolutely bang on. Thank you. That was so enlightening. And I assume a quick Google of Rebel Kitchen and we'll find all the wonderful places that we can go and buy the full range.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. Absolutely. And any top tips on where you can buy it when you're going for, so are you with any of the sort of main coffee shop sort of chains or anything so we can make a conscious choice there?
Yeah, for our barista product, we're working on it, but for now you can also buy it to use at home. So you can buy it from Ocado, and as of Monday you'll be able to buy it from Waitrose, and also I'm not allowed, don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but Tesco as well as of next week.
Don't tell Waitrose. Okay, so all right, well that was absolutely cracking. Thank you so much. So Louisa, I'm going to field some questions in a moment, but Louisa, I think Vix has already done a wonderful job at explaining why soil is sexy and why we are all going to be hearing so much more about soil, I would say, in the coming months and years, because there is so much more awareness about how essential it is as part of this wider ecosystem to tackle the issues of climate change. But why don't you sort of give us the thread of this beer linked with some of the other beers that we're brewing in the Rise Up series and what this is all ultimately about?
Yeah, so it was probably around this time last year when we sat down as a team to think about what comes next for Toast, with COP26 being delayed, and that kind of moving a year forward due to COVID. We felt that it was really time for us to put together a kind of educational awareness raising campaign that would help people to understand the impact that the food system as a whole is having on the planet, and also give us an opportunity to create some new and exciting beers, working with B Corp partners, because we're a very proud and active B Corp, and yeah, it just felt like a really cool campaign to launch. When we first started thinking about this, I was thinking land, air, water, but we wanted to do more than 3 beers, and started to dig into it, and that was really the first time that for me soil was flagged as a key environmental problem, but also a huge opportunity, and I got really excited. I watched actually a documentary called Kiss the Ground that I highly recommend to everybody to watch. It is narrated by Woody Harrelson of the Cheers fame, so obviously there were synergies there for us as a beer business, and yeah, I felt that the universe was telling us something. Reading more about soils, I discovered some really cool, interesting facts. One of them is that 25% of all species on the earth are living beneath the soil, and that seems a huge amount. We really, I don't think, contemplate how much life is actually in
moles. That's all I've got, moles.
Well, did you know that in 1 spoon of healthy soil there are more living organisms than there are people on the planet? Yeah, exactly. It was just, for me, it was kind of mind-blowing that there was this whole world underneath our feet that was alive, and so important to be giving us food. So about 90% of our food comes from the earth. We're reliant on the soil systems. Obviously some food comes from the oceans as well, but land-based foods are very reliant on healthy food systems, and Victoria's done a great job of explaining some of the damage that is being done by industrial agriculture. So that includes the overuse of chemical fertilizers and pesticides that's killing all of that life in the soil, and that life is not just important in its own inherent state, but also because it ensures that the organic materials are broken down into the soil, and the nutrients are fed back up into the plants. And so the nutrient density of the foods that we're eating has actually fallen quite a lot in recent years, because we're damaging the soil, largely through those chemical fertilizers and pesticides, which themselves are responsible for about 20% of greenhouse gas emissions that are associated with agriculture. So it's really a huge problem. Other methods of industrial farming include tilling that breaks down the soil, and as the soil's turned over, we're releasing carbon into the atmosphere, and also just destroying the soil structure that enables water to be held and oxygen to get down to the root systems. And then we're growing huge monocultures that are extracting the nutrients and not working, as Victoria said, in working with nature. So regenerative agriculture for me is a hugely exciting movement. It is fairly new. There are lots of farmers that have been exploring it. I was at Groundswell conference last week that brought together a lot of farmers that have either started down the regenerative journey or are fairly new to it, and trying to find out more about how they can move their businesses, because ultimately they're also reliant on healthy soils to continue producing crops for the long term. And I'm really excited about soils. There's a huge potential to draw down carbon, so they're a tool for us in tackling climate change. better soils also hold more water, which makes us more resilient from a climate perspective. And then, yeah, there's this beautiful diversity of life as well that we have to respect. So I was so excited to be working with Rebel, learning from them and the work that they've already done, the understanding that they already have about the soil system. And yeah, really fantastic partner to have on board. This past few months, I've been working on Toast's carbon footprint for last year, and looking at what we should do about those emissions that we've not yet been able to reduce. And rather than offsetting, I wanted to compensate for those emissions by investing in nature-based solutions. So the soil systems with UK farmers. So we're working with a company called Soil Heroes that's connected us directly with those farmers, and we as a business now can help to support those journeys, but also ourselves learn what regenerative agriculture means, how we can support it, how we can communicate the importance of soils to our customers and our community, because we do have to make soil sexy. It maybe isn't very sexy at the moment, and it's really important that I think we all come to value the health of our soils for our own benefit and for the planet. So really excited to be working with Soil Heroes. We've the equivalent that we would have offset in purchasing carbon credits, we've invested in UK farming, and really excited about the journey from here, all from a conversation we had as a team that progressed
over a beer.
Over a beer.
So what I really love is that it's so much more holistic than, I guess, simply thinking about carbon credits and taking sort of carbon out of the atmosphere. This idea of the broader ecosystem, when we're talking about, I guess, species extinction, and the idea that 25% of so 25% of all organic, what was it,
of all life on Earth is below.
All life is below. Yeah, so in terms of that broader food chain, ultimately, if you can do something that looks after 25% of life as well as taking carbon out of the atmosphere, surely that's just a no-brainer as to where we should really be directing a lot more focus. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so Soil Heroes talk about carbon plus plus, which is the drawdown of carbon, the improvement in water holding capacity. In a warming climate, we're going to have water stresses, but also risk of flooding in the UK, and then biodiversity, which of course helps to pollinate the plants as well. So everything comes full circle.
Amazing. So I am thinking we might have lost Vix and oh no, Zahra's there.
Yeah.
Did we lose
Vix? Had some technical. She was having some technical bits going on.
Yeah, no, I'm very familiar with the technical challenges. So so what I was going to do is just field a couple of the questions, and also say, so obviously one thing that Rebel is really known for, as you mentioned, the coconuts. And we did and about sort of coconuts in the beer. Stuart, what are your thoughts on coconut in beer? Because I'm not a mega fan of the coconut sort of stouts that are out there. I find them a little bit sort of sickly, sweety, sort of not for me. But I'm sure there's other things you could do that aren't just sort of coconut stouts. So what's your experience? Ever used coconuts?
Yeah, I think ultimately it comes down to what you want to try and achieve with the beer and why. If you want to make, let's give you a different example. If you're cooking in your kitchen, you can go down to Tesco's or supermarket, and you can pick up a bottle of something that says coconut essence. Whether it's ever been near a coconut or not is debatable. And in my experience, a lot of the beers that possibly claim coconut stout and other things are using some kind of
never been near a coconut.
Never been near a coconut kind of liquid, because the big problem with using the coconut as it stands is the fat content of a coconut. And the minute you start putting the fat content into a very hot liquid, you're going to get all sorts of emulsifications, and eventually get oil from the coconut rising. That will become sour on top of the beer quite quickly. So you can, and I've seen it made when I've been brewing in Africa, you can make coconut beer literally from coconuts and coconut milks and squash them up. You can get the sugars, but it's a very, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a very rough and ready product that, you know, you sort of, you ferment it overnight. It's not strong alcohol. It's kind of just like, it's just another way of using the coconut, I think. So yes, I think there's two answers to it. One, of course, you can make a coconut product, but whether we would be true, for example, with Rebel, you know, if we were to get some of the coconut meat that Rebel had going that doesn't end up in their yogurts, then technically that's just going to make the beer go bad. So I think there's a sensible balance, you know. Not everything appears to be what it says on the tin, I think is the way with some of those beers.
Yeah. No, fascinating. And I'm certainly not complaining, because this is freaking delicious. How we've used the oats. I mean, we have used oats in some of our beer in the past, but this one obviously we've gone heavy on the oats to to really lend that beautiful mouthfeel. So and something that we're actually now tempted to do more of, I would say, in a couple of our core range beers. So Zahra, thanks to Rebel for kind of introducing us more to the world of oats, because something that's probably going to be sneaking into one or two of our core range before too long.
See what you come up with and try the rest of them. If you need any taste testers, you can send them our way.
We sure will. So one question came in from Gareth, which was about this sort of conscious decision. Was it a conscious decision not to use soya in your milk? You mentioned the cashew and the hemp. Cashew we won't be putting in our beer, by the way. That's a nightmare, putting nuts in beer, and the allergen controls. We were very tempted by a peanut butter stout, and Stuart told us absolutely not. Peanuts aren't allowed anywhere near the brewery. So tell us whether soya was a conscious decision.
Yeah, so obviously our sort of semi-skimmed and whole came first, and then the barista followed. Soy is an allergen, so there are many people that are allergic to soy. We wanted to minimize any risk of, you know, polarizing people or not having people able to you know, drink our product. There is nuts in our semi-skimmed and whole, and obviously many people do email in and say, you know, I'd love to try this product, but I'm allergic to nuts. So we took the conscious decision not to add nuts into our barista version to kind of have that to be more accessible. Another thing with soy is it's quite a strong flavor. So you get quite a beany legume flavor, which it just kind of threw off, it would throw off the balance of trying to get it to taste like milk, especially within the coffee version as well with the barista. It would just be too like it taint the coffee too much. So yeah, I think a little bit of both, a little bit of allergen control and a little bit of like flavor preference.
Yeah, wonderful. And Stuart, I know that you had a technical question about the proteins. Hit Zahra with that one.
I was just intrigued. Coffee's acidic and it's heat, and you've got proteins and of course carbohydrates in your mix. And it was just a case of how do you manage them not being denatured, because I'm sure the structure of them affects the foam on the barista milk.
Yeah, really, really good question. This is actually where a lot of our recipe iterations came from, because you might have the base recipe that tastes great and you're like, yeah, this is perfect, and you might not be getting the foam to work, so you have to tweak the recipe a little bit, and then you might get the foam to work really well, but then the flavors off. So there's actually a constant rebalancing. For the barista SKU, because it's an acidic environment, it does need that extra little bit of buffer. So we do have a buffer in there to just kind of stabilize that difference between the environments. And we do also have a sunflower seed extract. And this is actually a really nice ingredient. It's processed with water. So again, that kind of going back to the processing to really stand up with our values. It's a sunflower seeds processed with water to extract a material which helps to bind the water and the fats together. So it kind of just stops that splitting, you know, when you're adding into your tea and coffee, it stops the splitting, within the mix as well. So a couple of extra ingredients needed just so it's fit for purpose within the coffee space. But that buffer, for example, we wouldn't need that in our standard semi-skimmed and whole, because we don't have to have that extra buffer against acidity.
Wow, so it's more complicated than you would imagine. It's quite a bit of alchemy going on there. That's amazing. Gareth, you have a question. I'm going to suggest you unmute yourself and ask your question if you're feeling brave enough, because I think it would be best just to go direct to Stuart with your question, if you're up for it.
Yeah, this is it's actually Gareth's partner, Lauren.
I was going to say, you've got a very high voice, Gareth.
Yeah, I just hijacked his account. Yeah, so sorry I forgot the name of the chemical, but this chemical that turned Rebel Kitchen's coconut milk pink, that I understand is in this beer. I missed in the in Stuart's presentation what the function of that chemical is, and if this particular beer required more, because I remember he said it leaves a sort of bitter taste of tea, or maybe it's the stringent taste. And if it does, if you do need more of that chemical, what do you then add to the beer to balance that stringent taste?
That's awesome, Mrs. Gareth. Thank you.
Thanks. What we're talking about at a sort of a very sort of top end level is a things called polyphenols and tannins. So tannins are the things that give you that bite in your tea, and to a degree coffee as well. Polyphenols come from a couple of places in beer. They come from the hops, and they come from the grist, i.e. barley and the outer layer of oats and things. They're actually part of the husk. And the trick in brewing is actually keeping them out of the beer. So there's processes where you stop the process before you extract it. So to use an analogy of tea, if you left your tea brewing for too long, eventually it becomes puckering and quite sharp. So in the brew process, we have to know the point where to stop that process before that happens for the beer downstream. This is at the hot side when we're mashing. And the balance for this particular beer was because we've gone now with oats and sort of a less than standard grist in the beer. We just had to be aware that these precursors to the polyphenols were going to be in the beer. Now, some of them give a bittering flavor, and some of them you want there because some of the hop flavor and characteristic is a polyphenol that changes. But there are some parts of this family of chemicals, if you like, that have a tendency to change color, and I'm sure Zahra and myself could spend the rest of the night talking about why and wherefore that is. But very simply, so when some of this family of polyphenols are subjected to oxygenation, that will start the color change process. And in coconut milk, it goes pink. In beer, if there's too much of these precursors in the beer, that beer can go from red to purple to almost black overnight if we're not careful. So it was more being aware that they were there and managing that as a potential impact on the appearance of the beer downstream.
It's a useful reminder, actually, of why Stuart, this is getting very empty now, I need a top up, of why Stuart is always adamant that all beer should be poured into a glass, both for the beautiful aroma, but also for the appearance, because it is not by chance that the beer looks like it looks. There is often a lot of painstaking work to ensure that the beer isn't brown, purple, all sorts of colours that could easily occur without some conscious effort.
But of course, if we went back to pre-industrial days and just had our beer out of pewter tankards, I could do what the hell I liked. No one could see it.
Exactly. Awesome. Well, thank you everyone so much. Zahra, thank you so much. It's been brilliant learning more about Rebel. Absolutely, yeah, fantastic business. We've loved working with you. We look forward to working with you again. Please pass on our thanks to Vix as well. And Stuart, brilliant. I did miss moments, and by moments I mean all of your words of wisdom. But I'm sure you did speak passionately about Harlequin, did you?
I mentioned it, but it was more about throwing the rulebook out, Rob, to be honest.
Well, I look forward to Harlequin being the next big thing in brewing and you claiming to have got there first. And Louisa, thank you as ever to bringing it all into full context and explaining so eloquently the entire ecosystem that this falls within. So thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening and Cheers.